Well, hello there, my abundant healers. How are you today? So, in our last video, we addressed a question that was raised by a member of our group, and that is I'm interested in trying to figure out what my strengths are and believing in the value that they offer. How to use that going forward, how to hone in on what is unique to me. And so, as I mentioned in our last video, to my mind, that means paying attention to what brings you pleasure and then honoring, prioritizing, and following it. But sometimes that's not so easy, right? Because we have a lifetime of conditioning of family, friends, school, work, professional colleagues, everyone basically giving us this message that what's going on inside of us is not as important as what's going on outside of us. And if we're to pay attention to whatever your inner heart song might be, that's actually selfish, particularly if it disrupts the systems going on around us, right? And now, usually when most people come to my group and to my program, they've kind of reached a point where the systems haven't quite been working for them anymore. And they're ready for something different, they're ready for something new, and that desire is kind of pushing against the sort of limiting beliefs that have been ingrained in them through this kind of systemic conditioning and or institutionalization that they've experienced in their workplaces. And there are other frustrations as well, not being able to find clients, not being able to stand out in what feels like a saturated market, feeling as if you can't compete, struggling to honor your fees, right? Arguing with insurance companies for all those therapists out there, right? So part of standing out actually as a practitioner in any niche is honoring who and what you are, like letting yourself have your own personalized and authentic voice. And I know sometimes that's kind of difficult because we can be trained to be sort of these blank slates. You know, if you are of service, then you should be a blank slate because that's what's going to serve your client best. And I don't 100% agree with that. And I also think that that's actually going to undercut your success, particularly if you're trying to build a standout brand, for example. I'm going to talk a little bit more about branding towards the end of this video because I promised you a branding challenge, and dun, 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 it is up and ready to be accepting registrations today. So I'm very excited about it. But first, I promised you a follow-up to this question in the video that we did yesterday, and that is practicing practical, basic, concrete techniques and or sort of rituals that we can do to start bringing spirit and soul into the business practice. They don't have to be separate things. In fact, I think they work much more fluidly if they are not. So part of succeeding in business is also listening to the essence of yourself, your source energy, your inner being, your higher self, your unconscious self, whatever you want to call it, okay? And so today, I want to explore 3 steps that I believe will help you access those parts of yourself so that you can start to put yourself into what I'm going to refer to as receiving mode. But opening yourself up to the wealth of inspiration and ideas that you may have, but you're just not tapping into it, or you kind of have an automatic no to whatever that might be because you're still kind of struggling with limiting beliefs and or with the conditioning that you've kind of been ingrained with when it comes to your practice, okay, and to the work that you do. So these steps, 3 basic steps, okay? So the first one is we are going to pose a question or an intention, and we're going to leave it broad and open enough so that we can receive guidance without narrowing the field around it, okay? Then we're going to do a bit of a warm-up, a sort of an artistic warm-up, and we're going to do a squiggle drawing, crossing our hands across the midpoint of the body. So this is going to promote bilateral integration of the brain, right and left brain. And then we are going to bring that image into the body with a meditation. And then lastly, we're going to use our non-dominant hand to write our reflections. Okay, so pretty simple. If you're watching this video, whether it's live or on the replay, I would invite you to join me and to do it with me because this is going to help you access some of the knowing of your inner being in your business. Okay, all right. So to start, we're going to set an intention and pose the question. So for me, my intention and my question is just a basic one. What guidance can you offer me with respect to my practice, right? Or what guidance can you offer me with respect to my next career move? Okay, whatever that might be. Now you're going to take a drawing utensil, one in each hand, and I'm going to be using markers, but you can use anything. Sometimes I use oil pastels, chalk pastels, colored pencils, crayons. For this particular exercise, it's not really important. Whatever you've got on hand. Okay, so I'm going to take one in each hand, and I'm just going to start drawing on the page, making sure that I'm crossing the midline. And so incidentally, this is something that we do a lot in EMDR protocols, for those of you that may work with trauma. And I'm just going to keep going until it feels natural and right to stop. So now you can either color in some of the negative spaces with whatever you feel drawn to, or you can look for shapes in the design. So it just looks like this. It's nothing too fancy. Obviously, it's just a scribble. It's intended to be. We're just warming up the body, activating both sides of the brain. We're working on integration, right? So I am going to, now you could do this for a while if you decide that you enjoy it, and sometimes I do 1, 2, or 3 scribbles before I actually go into this next part of the process. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to move along. And I'm going to look for shapes in the squiggle, I think, instead of just coloring in the negative spaces. I kind of want to look for what stands out to me. Okay, so I'm kind of seeing a snake. And I'm trying to not interpret anything immediately. I do have some personal associations with the snake as a symbol. I've had a lot of snake dreams in the past, and they've had a particular significance in the context of those dreams. So granted, I have kind of a working symbolic language that I've been developing for years, but it doesn't mean that nothing new ever emerges. And there's one other thing. So the other thing I see is sort of a sailboat, but it's sort of like one of those little boats that you see, like, you know, a child sort of pushing around on a lake in the park or something like that. Or a little pond in the park. Also a symbol that has come up for me a couple of times. And it's got, like, usually it's filled with gold coins. It's kind of a symbol that I have for abundance. Okay. So this is sort of what it looks like to me. Okay. So now this next part is we're going to do a little meditation on it. So I'd like you to sort of just take a snapshot of that image and that symbol, or even the experience of what it feels like to do that exercise in your mind. Just turn your attention inward, focusing on the breath. Drawing the tendrils of your energy home. Whatever thoughts, worries, or concerns may occupy you in this moment, like ribbons, we're going to slip your energy out of those entanglements and just call it home. And just allow yourself to grow a little bit heavier in your seat, noticing the contact between your feet and the floor. Drawing your awareness to the most subtle sensation you may be having. And then to the most prominent sensation you may be having. Really grounding into the body, into this moment. There is no time but now. And for the purposes of today's exercise, I'd like you to focus on your third eye, that place between your eyes and the center of your brow. And to imagine you have like a movie screen in there in your mind's eye. And you're going to project the drawing or the images that you found in your drawing onto that screen. And I'm going to play the bowl for a short amount of time. And as you listen to the resonance, imagine hitting play on that movie and just watch what unfolds. And so I invite you just to take a snapshot of whatever you may have witnessed in your mind. Breathing it in almost as if it is a fragrance. Letting it sink in through the lungs, becoming diffuse into the bloodstream, pumping to the rhythm of your heartbeat, to every extremity, from your crown to your toes, from your fingertips to your nose. Letting it sink into your cells, your bones, becoming body knowledge. And just know that if it is not obvious to you right now, through time and synchronicities in your environment, your own creativity, imagination, intuition, dreams, a deeper understanding and awareness will rise to your conscious mind. And you will know what to do. And so I'm going to count backwards from 5 to 1. And when we reach 1, we can release this practice. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I invite you to just reflect on what you might have witnessed on that movie screen in your mind's eye. How did your symbols and your images evolve? And you might, before getting into this next part, maybe with your dominant hand, write out a few of your reflections, the things that you noticed. But I would like you, before completing this exercise, to try switching to your non-dominant hand. And just to allow a guidance and a wisdom to come through. Just whatever the first thing is that comes to you, just allowing it to kind of move through your hand. And it may feel a little uncomfortable because we're not used to using, obviously, our non-dominant hand. But that is what allows us to really step into that receiving mode. Okay. That's a long one. Okay. 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 All right, this is a long one. Doesn't always come out this long. Okay, so the wisdom that I got was snake in the water stirs up buried treasure. A surprise through business, but not for it directly, is coming your way. That's a long one. Sometimes they're not so clear like that. This is kind of what came out for me. So what I saw in my vision was I sort of put my snake and my little boat on the screen, and at first they sort of became animated, but then they turned into the ocean. The boat was a real boat on the ocean, and the snake was kind of like a sea monster, and it came up out of the ocean, and it was enormous, gigantic snake, and it kind of crashed down into the boat, and as it did so, the boat kind of exploded with all these gold coins, and as it starts moving through the water, it starts like, it's almost like all the buried treasure, like from pirate ships and whatnot, starts rising to the surface, and I start seeing like all these abundant riches sort of surfacing up out of the water. And it has some significance for me because I've been having lots of dreams about things coming up out of the water lately, and have felt like there's something in my unconscious or maybe in my higher self or beyond my awareness that's kind of shaken up and shifting, and that there are things that are surfacing, but in a good way. Calling in my abundances. So I have and my associations with snakes have to do with psychic power or kind of like a connection to source energy. I also associate it with sort of divine feminine energy. So that was kind of a nice exercise. I always like surprises, so I'll be interested to see what that is. So that's just a demo and an example of how you might tap into your higher knowing. Now, I do this and sometimes get more practical advice, like, for example, you should do a funnel about, my funnels are usually about love and self-help and personal development. So it'd be like, you should do a funnel about anxious avoidant attachment or something like that. Like I do get very direct advice like that sometimes. And you can gear, like sort of shift the way you receive that information as well. But this is a good place to start. And I think it's good to start just being really open and receptive and broad about when you start tapping into things like these, because if you're too narrow, what happens is your ability to receive gets kind of foggy and confused because you've got so much tied up in it, right? Like your momentum around, I'm struggling without clients, I feel like I can't make any money, or I'm never going to pay my student loans, or, I'm feeling burnt out. That if you've got a lot of that energy kind of tied up in whatever you're asking about, it may make it harder to receive. But if you leave it open enough and broad enough, you're more likely to get something that might help you. Now, I mentioned before I end today that I was going to talk about a little bit about the branding challenge that we are now accepting registrations for. So, for example, this question is a really great question to kick us off because it talks about how can I tap into what makes me unique? Now, if you know how important online visibility is these days, especially to your success, but you feel as if you have no clear or cohesive message or path in your branding, then this would be something that you would be interested in. Equally, I'm sure that you have no shortage of ideas. A lot of people have great ideas. They have, visual logos, or they have I find a lot of people in this group tend to be creative types, so that they're not at a loss for ideas, but they just don't know how to narrow it down and or where to start. Or sometimes they feel like they're in a really crowded field and they're struggling to establish themselves with a standout brand that's really attractive to the kinds of clients they want to work with. Or maybe you might find that people don't sign up for your giveaways or to your subscriber list, and if they do, they don't follow up, or it's impossible to get them to engage with you either in your workshops or on your Facebook page or in your online communities, right? Or maybe you struggle with how to sell your services authentically without being, too salesy, and you tend to be allergic to money conversations and struggle to honor your fee, right? Or maybe you struggle with tech overwhelm and the thought of developing a brand for yourself just sounds scary, and you don't know, should I hire a web developer? Do I need to spend all this money on a designer? And who can afford that? And I don't know what I would tell them anyway, right? And or if you just can't find consistent clients and you want to be able to stand out in your market so that they can find you. If any of that applies to you, then this branding challenge is going to rock your world. You are going to love it. After this challenge, you are going to walk away with a personalized brand style guide. It's going to help create cohesion for you across your social media platforms and your website. Okay. You also will have created an essential, sort of like a guide for your essential marketing copy. Okay. And this could apply to your home pages and or your about pages. And this is really essential because it's going to help you create an audience filter. Okay. Now, the last part is that you will have increased confidence and tech savvy when it comes to expanding your brand's reach and boosting your mailing list. So I'm going to show you how to attract more people to whatever your signups are so you can start building out your mailing list. And I'm also going to show you some tips and tricks on how to use certain online programs that are free that will allow you to create really beautiful imagery across your branding. Okay? So if you are interested, there is a caption to register and sign up for it there's a link to sign up for it in the caption of this video. And also let me know in the comments below if you decided to do this exercise with me. I would love to see what kinds of inspiration you've received around your practice and your business. And also, if you have any interest in joining our challenge, let me know in the comments below when you register. So I can't wait to see you, and you'll be seeing me pop in here a lot more over the next couple of weeks. Have a great day.